Welcome to Click for IB Biology. We're looking now at the mechanism of what is called sexual selection as opposed to natural selection. There's a blank version of this presentation. A PDF is linked into the description below, where you'll also find a quiz which has got 10 questions and answers so that you can chart your own progress. So we're looking now at something called sexual selection. Observing the images shown here of male and female individuals of different species, we can immediately see the distinct differences between them. In this case here, we can see the large size of the animal and the prominence of antlers in these white-tailed deer. This is the female here. This is the male here. In these ducks, you can see the bright coloration here in this particular individual, that's the male, and the more drab features of the female here. Lions, of course, the male lion with its mane, its large muscular size, significantly larger animal than the lioness. And then, of course, perhaps the most famous example of these differences, which are called sexual dimorphism. So di is two. Based on the sexes, we have two morphs or forms. So based on gender, biological sex, there are two forms available, seen in the male and female. And the famous example here, of course, is the peacock, with the male with its large display of feathers around the outside like this, and the less colorful hen bird here in front, which doesn't have the same dramatic coloration or display. Equally so, we find this in the invertebrates, where these beetles here are showing sexual dimorphism. This is the male here, and this is the female here. And then, of course, we're over here into the arachnids, where this is the female and this is the male here. Now, notice that these features which these organisms are showing are largely what we would call non-utilitarian. Utilitarian refers to useful features required for everyday survival, but the singular role of non-utilitarian features is purely what we call sexual selection, and the ability of the male and the female, for the male to be able to breed with the female, or to allow the female to select the best male for reproductive purposes. And that best male is really to do with the improving the likelihood or the chances of the survival of their offspring. So let's take a look at how this might work. So the sexually selected characteristic, the purpose of which is to increase the chance of successful reproduction, the survival of the offspring. And the idea is that it's to allow the signals which are being given are allowing in the males and females to attract each other, so that they select the greatest genetic fitness, that is the best survival of the offspring. And of course, in turn, this implies that they are of signals of good health. Now, examples of these kinds of signals are often seen in vibrant colors. You can see that the three examples I'm giving you are all of birds, but these do exist in many other types of animals and species. So the vibrant colors here, notice the difference between the coloration, the blue and the oranges of the male here in these hill blue flycatchers. This is the male, and this one here is the female. So this sexual dimorphism, not just in colors, a visual thing, but there can also be sound signals as well. Classically, this is seen in the zebra finch. I have linked into the description below to a recording of zebra finches' songs, these elaborate and exaggerated songs that they use. But then also we see this in behavioral traits, where the Satin Bowerbird, the male Satin Bowerbird, has this extremely elaborate piece of reproductive behavior in which it used to display to attract the female, giving out the signals of its genetic fitness to the females, inviting them to reproduce. The mechanism of sexual selection often begins with a utilitarian, naturally selected feature, such as the idea of the tail feathers of a bird. So that's what we would have at the beginning. Then, as the tail gets progressively longer, we get the combination of the utilitarian survival feature, having a tail which allows good flight, to also starting to combine that with the ability to attract females through sexual selection. Eventually, as the mechanism operates, that those individuals with the best tails are attracting the more females, and of course the genes for better tails become selected at the expense of the shorter tails, until we end up with this extreme non-utilitarian example of the tail feathers of the bird here. Now the singular purpose is to attract the female. In fact, there comes a point where the tail structure may actually end up being a negative feature with regard to natural selection, and we can see that in this particular species here, that there may come a point where the extreme nature of the tail becomes a disadvantage. This accelerated development of a feature is known as Fisherian runaway, where the feature almost becomes out of control. And again, the most extreme example that is well known is that of the peacock, where researchers have actually shown that as the feathers get longer, the peacock is able to attract more breeding partners. So what the researchers did was they artificially extended beyond the natural length of the feathers, and indeed such birds did attract more females to reproduce. However, the negative part was such males were unable to maintain their balance, and so we ended up with this negative impact of the runaway Fisherian runaway feature. So there is a limit to how extreme the character can become, but they do tend to be very extreme features. This was first written about and detailed in a book called The Descent of Man, which also describes the role of sexual selection in humans. And this, in fact, was Darwin's second great book, published in 1871, The Descent of Man. So Darwin contributing not just to natural selection, but to the theories of sexual selection as well. Our next video link is now appearing on the left-hand side, our playlist on the right-hand side, and a chance to subscribe to the channel in the center should you wish to.